How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
Brooks Running reminds us that we're all powered by something. Whether it's the me-time energy of a run after a day at the office, the electrifying energy of your first marathon, or the infectious energy of a group run with your friends. No matter what energy powers you, Brooks has gear specifically designed to unleash it. So lace up and let it out. Let's run there. Visit brooksrunning.com today to learn more.
Vitamin Water Zero Sugar has great taste, zero BS, and obviously zero sugar. For those with zero room in their calendar, zero patience for slow walkers, those who get 0 hours of sleep on a Saturday night, have zero filter, zero given, and zero interest in grabbing a plain, boring water. Grab a delicious Vitamin Water Zero Sugar today.
Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Hi, this is Tony Ruggiero here on the Tour Coach. If you're looking to get better at coaching, teaching, or playing the game of golf, you're in the right spot. I'm about to take you behind the scenes, inside the ropes, with all of the people I meet on my journey in the game of golf that are here to shed some experiences and shed some information that's going to help your journey improve and get better. Get ready. Let's go. Let's get better. All right. So this is going to be a cool one here. Joining me here on the Tour Coach this week, and I'm going to send it also out, to all our students and stuff. And joining me is my good friend, one of my longtime mentors. You hear him on the Tour Coach all the time, Wayne Flint, who's actually going to do some teaching with me this weekend down at Old Palm. And my good friend who gotten to know each other over the last few years, was a great player, played the PGA Tour, low-am at the Masters, lots of accolades coming up, and now he's on the instruction side of the business and has a unique insight. Rick Fair. Rick, thanks for taking the time to join us as well.
Great being out with you.
Just learning how cold it is out where you are today. You started to advise me how the hell damn cold it's been.
Right.
So the question came in. It was from a student down at Old Palm. The guy's a good player, been a good athlete, or is a good athlete. And he said, hey, love golf, love instruction. I go through YouTube. He watches our YouTube stuff. And, he said, how do I know if I'm getting good golf instruction help? And and the comment that stuck out to me was, when I go through and I start looking at some of the ones that have the highest numbers, he said, like I would do if I was trying to fix something in my house, like how to program my VCR or whatever, or not a VCR anymore, but like the ones with the most views, he said, that I see all these people are people either A, I've never heard of, or B, they're people when I look up and I Google have never taught anybody that's any good. So how do I know? And I thought that was an interesting perspective and an interesting question to pose to you guys. I thought you guys would be a great, just kind of a great sounding board for this, for our students and our teachers and listeners. What Wayne, start with you.
Well, Tony, I think, you and I've talked about this a lot. And I think, when people are out there and, in and around the Southeast, they get to looking up, the teachers and they'll look at the Golf Magazine and the Golf Digest stuff and certainly get an idea of some of the people that are, in those categories and on those lists, whatever you want to call them, that are within a couple hour drive for them or they can get to them. And, then you can kind of look those folks up and kind of see their resumes and see who they've taught and things like that. And, you and we've talked about a bunch where you have to go to someone at some point who has made somebody good. And I think the more you can ask around, maybe other professionals, or how I started getting my name out there a lot was, and you would remember this way back when I used to do those scoreboards. I got myself out in front of all the best amateur players in the state by putting up a professional scoreboard, a scoreboard that would look nice for the state amateurs and things like that. And I just kind of got out in front of a lot of the people that I already knew, and let them know that I was teaching golf for a living. And this goes way back 20 something years. But then the fact that I had worked with some people at Golf Digest when they were doing a golf instruction program, doing the Golf Digest schools, that kind of started to give me a little bit of credibility. And then once that snowball started rolling a little bit, then it was up to me to try to make people better, and that's really the key to the thing. You can get your foot in the door, but at some point in time, you have to make somebody good. And as you know, with me, I've never done any advertising or anything like that. My stuff around Alabama has all been word of mouth over all the years, and I could have probably done a little better earlier in my career promoting myself a little bit to get my name out there a little bit more nationally, but I didn't, and that's okay. But it was a way that I built a nice solid business here in Birmingham and in Alabama, through having good relationships and meeting the right people that play the most amount of golf, and that that really helps.
Rick, you come at it I want to start with you from the tour perspective, because I've had top teachers say, oh, the tour's a closed shop, best player, I'm a great teacher, and nobody came to see me. I'm curious your opinion from the tour perspective, and you've also been an agent basically as well,
Mm-hmm.
which I think gives you another interesting perspective on it.
Mm-hmm.
How do tour players and people at that level, I mean, I know how players found me, and mine was more I'd develop players, got out there, and then you'd have an occasional person ask you. But from your perspective, from that tour, how do they find the right instruction, and how do they find information?
Ooh, I think because I'm not out on tour now, might be someday as far as working with players, but I would just say that I think it's just as dangerous for those guys as it is for.
I think it's almost more.
Right. So that, you referenced your club member or whatever, who's a pretty good player, and he's asked you, "Hey Tony, how do I know the information's good, or should I whatever?" And I think, they're on my lesson tee every day that more and more players that have way more information than they'll ever need, quite frankly, and they don't know how the pieces fit together or whether it matters or not, right? So, and I think, frankly, a lot of us coaches still need to learn a lot of that stuff better, right? So this question probably pertains to coaches as well as players. And, I didn't develop the internet. I didn't develop social media. I didn't develop, it's just the new world, right? And so it's the deal, right? I can just speak into this thing, and ask a question, and it's going to give me an answer of some sort, right? So, okay, that is what it is, right? We could tell people, hey, don't ever look at an online video or instruction, or don't subscribe, don't follow, don't whatever. Just go off into the wilderness with a golf club and some balls and learn to play, right? So that's not going to happen. So I'm a big fan of, for any of us, 3 letters, WHY. So the question why. Coaches we don't ask that question often enough, and certainly our students, the players, don't ask that question often enough, meaning they're on there, and so you mentioned Joe, let's say Joe Mayo, right? So he's got some strong opinions, and this is the way it should be done, this is good, and the world has pitted that against Shallow and Parker or whatever. So what is an instructor who's trying to figure out how to teach short game, for example? What do you teach, right? If you're just learning, you haven't, and then can you imagine our poor students, right, are consuming all this stuff, and it's just mass confusion. So, um,
See, and on that, Rick, I'd like
yeah,
your opinion on this. I would say that to be really good at teaching, you ought to be able to teach both of those versions to the student who needs each one, right? Because not everybody's going to need to get steam.
Yeah.
And not everybody struggles with contact,
Right.
and not everybody
Right.
needs to get shallow.
Right. So I'm going to divert, you kind of teed me up for this one. It's
I love that.
Slow one down the middle. So not this year. This year I wasn't at Open Forum or wasn't at the PGA show, but in 24 I was. And I don't know if we've had this conversation before, but I show up and run into my buddy Brad Faxon, and so Brad and I are sitting in the audience, and this is the year where Joe Mayo, and Parker McLaughlin were kind of the headliners. Everybody wanted it was the hot topic, and we're going to have this discussion, right? And we get into this thing, and of course Joe has all the screen full of TrackMan data, right? And discussing most of that data came from John Sinclair, but so he's making that argument. I turned to Brad, who obviously phenomenal player, had more success than I did, brilliant short game and all that. I turned to Brad and I pointed up to the stage, and I said, "So Brad, which method did you use?" and it's just going to be edited. He turns to me, he whispers, says, "I have no effing idea." Like he didn't know if he was steep or shallow. He just did it, right? He was great. Now, that doesn't mean you don't need to understand that stuff and teach it. But here you got somebody who arguably was probably a top 5 short game player in the world. Never really thought of trying to be steep or shallow. He just hit the shot, right? And he turned to me after several minutes and said, "Well, Rick, what about you?" And I was no slouch around the greens. And I said, I think I did both and everything in between, right? And I understand we're talking about, technique, data for a stock 20-yard shot, whatever. But, to develop skill that's useful to a golfer, it needs to be broadly, the skill needs to have adaptation, right? I'm up here in Seattle. I grew up in Seattle, sloppy, wet, crappy conditions most of the year. The ball doesn't sit up on the grass, and it's sitting on really sloppy turf. So I developed a technique that my go-to predominantly was probably more of what Joe Mayo's teaching, right? I had to hit that ball first, right? I mean, if I hit, 3/4 of an inch behind it, even with bounce, it's just not working, right? And Parker McLaughlin grew up in Hawaii, lives in Arizona, right? So, I mean, he's going to have a different default tendency. So the question is, well, how do our students, learn it, and how do we help them learn it, right? And I think, and I guess I'm getting away from sort of the online stuff, but it's like players, and I think it's outside of golf instruction and learning golf skills. I just think the world now, people can get answers, so to speak, quickly, but they have no idea why. It's like there's not a general understanding of what matters. If you teach, hey, club head needs to be outside the hands at P3 or whatever in the backswing, I'd ask, well, why? Why does that have to happen? And quite honestly, it doesn't, right? I mean, there's plenty of examples of somebody that had club head behind hands at P3 and they won major championships. So, I just think that the world of golf instruction has moved obviously online, and I think it's great. I'm available remotely with my students in that. But there's sort of an interaction that might not happen, right? So your friend or student who's wondering about how does he know if the information online is good, quite frankly, there's a risk. I don't think there's a clear answer. I think you got to be super careful. We got to know what we're looking for. Do I need, if it's specifically, how do I hit a high wedge shot from below the green off a tight lie, with elevation and spin? Okay,
you can Google it.
You can Google it. But it's like, how do I hit a pitch shot? It's like, quite frankly, the answer should involve, well, it depends. And that's not what people are looking for. But
right. No, you're right.
Right. I mean, and I think we're in a world now where too many golfers don't understand, right? That, the answer is conditional on, well, even what kind of golf club are you using? Is it a high
Wayne,
bounce or low
I'm gonna
bounce?
take the next question to you, and then I want Rick to answer it as well. And I'm gonna start with a story. Wayne, you've heard a bunch before from me, and I'm Rick and I've talked before. Wayne and I both worked for our mentor Hank Johnson a long time, and he had a guy asked him one time. This was in the early days of the internet, but stuff was coming out, and I remember him saying it was like everything on the internet was like going into a drugstore and taking one of everything on the shelf. Everything in there could help you if it's what you needed or what was wrong.
Right.
But if you went in there and you took everything on every shelf, you'd be sick as shit and you might die. Right. So that comes back to what we do, right? Helping them pick things. Wayne, when somebody comes to you on the lesson and they, and I know we all get this and they're like, well, hey, I mean, I had, Andy the other day asked me something. Well, I saw this in a Como thing, right? I saw on right, and it was actually a really good point about something we're working on. But like, how do you deal with that? And what is your advice to people when they say, okay, well, like, how should I find good stuff, good content that will help me? And then I want Rick to answer that as well.
Tony, I think, I've been listening and I agree with what everybody's saying. The big key is getting the student to find a competent teacher right off the bat so that they can identify what the student's tendencies are, whether they're too steep or too shallow or whatever the case may be. So you have to identify those tendencies so they know where they stand and what they need to do to try to minimize those or get them a little more under control, whatever way you want to look at it. And then I tell all my students, you can look at all this stuff, but don't try to do it all. Use it for what it is, and it's entertainment a lot of times. Let's face it, a lot of guys are putting their stuff out there, trying to get more notoriety and more famous, if you will, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think that's fine, but just because they put it out doesn't mean it's for Joe Smith, the guy that just came to you, who's too steep. Well, him getting more steep might be killer to him, or maybe he needs to understand what steep really is. I mean, you throw those terms steep and shallow around, and those can be dangerous terms, I think. So I think the student has to get with a good teacher so they can identify the tendencies, and then a student can get on the internet and Google or whatever and watch these great videos that are out there and see if they fit what the student's trying to learn how to do better, and then pay attention to them. If they don't fit at all, well, move right on to the next one and see if it may help them. But I think trying to do everything that you see, I think that's insanity. I mean, I don't think you'll ever get better because that goes back to the pills in the pharmacy. I mean, it's going to end up killing you before it's over and done with. So I think you have to have some good instruction early on. And those kinds of lessons are usually given by people who've taught for a living for a while and had a little bit of success with it. If they hadn't had any success and they weren't any good at it, they'd have probably washed out and be doing something else for a living. So you have to go with someone who's taught for a little while and has been able to make a living doing, teaching golf, and then let them help you identify. And the student has to ask some good questions. Here's what my bad shots are doing. Here's what my good shots are doing. Why do you think that is? And if a teacher has taught for a while, they should be able to sit back and talk on that, with some degree of certainty and some degree of accuracy. So, once you start to get that stuff out there, then the student, that me, and you've watched me teach a bunch, I like my students to leave knowing exactly what it is they're trying to do and why. I like them to know why. I don't care if they do it or don't do it. I'm always pulling for them to get it perfect, but I want them to know whether they do it or don't, but I really want them to know why they're trying to do it so they can continue to practice and continue to push forward, getting better at the skill they're trying to fix.
Yeah, absolutely, Wayne. That's great. And I'd add to that too. One thing that I know we try to do is understand what they're working on, why, but also how to monitor it on their own to be able to see if they're actually getting better, whether that's through some kind of drill, whether it's educating them how to look at their own video themselves and if the club or whatever. But, and I think that stuff, all three of those are critically important with all the info is out there.
Hey, this is Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast here to help you make the most of your summer with Michelob Ultra, a superior light beer worth playing for. Play for it with the guys when you're competing to see who can sink more birdies on the golf course, because winning tastes even better with Ultra on the line. Play for Ultra. Fill your fridge with Michelob Ultra this summer. Enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025 Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. Becoming the most valuable sports franchise in the world doesn't happen without risk. A man who's willing to bet it all, and the players ready to make their own luck. America's Team, The Gambler and His Cowboys, is the story of the 1990s Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones's impact on NFL history. Featuring interviews with iconic 90s players and more. Watch America's Team, The Gambler and His Cowboys, August 19th, only on Netflix.
You're tuned into Auto Intelligence, live from Auto Trader, where data, tools, and your preferences sync to make your car shopping smooth.
They're searching inventory.
Oh, yeah.
They find what you need.
They're gonna find it.
You can make a budget for your wallet to help you succeed. Pricing's precise and true.
So true.
It's smarter car shopping.
Ooh.
Just for you.
Oh, it's just for you. Ooh. Find your next ride at autotrader.com. Powered by Auto Intelligence.
Rick, how do you educate folks that come to see you?
So I've chosen, probably partially because of what I would say might be, if I have weaknesses, my weaknesses, like, hey, just creating content. I mean, it's obvious I don't do a lot of that. I really like engaging with people in person, one-on-one. And that's not because, hey, I'm a 60-plus-year-old guy and I'm old school. It's not. I think I'm very as progressive as anyone else as far as trying to be on top of the latest, whether it be tech and, understanding. And I'm sitting here, I got a pile of books that have been influential in changing me as a coach, right? And not one of them is a golf book. I'm looking at it's like, I mean, it's just, so I think that helps me be a better coach and understand how to teach people. The delivery, the platform we're talking about, online instruction, I'm not opposed to it, but it's similar to, and it just so happens the three of us, Tony, you're the kid of the bunch probably, right? Wayne
a little
and I
bit.
are probably badly. Okay. But anyway, anytime I share certain things, it's going to be easily dismissed as, hey, he's a boomer, he's old school, right? I get it. And I'd like to say that's not fair, but
it's probably fair.
Okay. But I've got experience to go with knowledge or whatever, right? So we all are what we are. But right, there was, years and years ago, like, hey, what should I do to help my, golf game? A student might ask you, it's like, well, cancel your Golf Digest subscription. That whole thing. Like, back in that day, people would get, instead of online on YouTube or Instagram, they'd look at the latest edition and there's tips from Tony or tips from Rick, right? And there's just, it's going to be different perspectives of how to do things, right? And so the athlete then gets a head full of all sorts of information, right? And it may or may not be congruent, right? There are different ideas, different techniques. So there's a massive overconsumption. So number one, that's a problem. Honestly, most of my students, I'd say get the heck off. Like, how frustrating is it? You get somebody that's making progress and now they're asking questions about all these videos they've been watching. It's like, that might be a fine information or a great instructor, but what's happening in your brain now? Right. And we're just presently, I've got one of the books here. this, I don't know if you've Johan Hari, he's written, it's, stolen focus, why you can't pay attention. It's talking about just human beings have so much going through their heads now that, like in the 1950s, that brain activity, you'd be diagnosed as schizophrenic. Like people have so much crap going on in their heads, they can't focus. I don't know if any of you have students that you think that, but that's the reality, right? So when it's not, hey, stop getting online and watching, swing tip videos, but you got to be careful about how much of it comes in, right? And so I'm not anti, content. It's just, I think the hard reality is, how does a human being learn something? How do they develop skill? And how do they perform well when it matters, right? And those are core principles for any of our students, right? Whether it be a tour player or, a club player. And so I'm not so bold as to say stop consuming any of it, but we're curious, right? It's interesting, right? And I don't play for a living anymore, so there's no risk. I don't care how I play anymore, right? So I'm not going to harm myself as a player, but it's a dangerous thing. So in answer, the whole context here is like, well, how do people find the stuff that's going to help them and weed out the stuff that doesn't? There needs to be a general understanding. Okay, Wayne, you backed it up again. Why? Like, why? How do you develop the skill? If you're chunking and blading chip shots, pitch shots, I've joked with Joe Mayo, we'll chat once in a while, and I said, Joe, I knew this crap when I was 13. Like, this is not new stuff. Like this, like, am I going to try to hit the ball first or the ground first? I mean, like, well, no, seriously, like I've got students that have never thought of this stuff, right? And so I'm not trying to call them out as idiots, but I think that as an industry, we need them to have to try to think it through too, right? And it sounds like I think both of your approaches are that, and yet we feel the pressure of giving people instant fixes, right? So whether the instant fix comes from a YouTube video or from Tony or Wayne in person, right? If they come, and maybe your relationship with your students is such that you might feel comfort in letting them struggle and trying to figure it out on their own. But quite frankly, if they're willing to fail, in the journey of learning, the end result is a lot stronger, in my opinion, rather than, oh, well, that worked for a week and now it doesn't work. It's like,
no.
They literally,
Tony, one thing that I always look back on, and you remember HJ, and you and I have both watched him teach a number of golf lessons, and one of our buddies who we've both known a long time, he used to always come and be asking Hank, well, Hank, what about this? And Hank, what about that? And all this new stuff all the time. And I remember one time I was watching him teach this guy, and he said, why don't you try to learn what you already know? Learn how to do what you already know, and quit trying to go find new stuff to do that you don't know. Why don't you just try to learn what you already know about, right? And I think that's good advice. And Tony, you and I've talked about helping younger teachers, and I think a lot of younger teachers or beginning teachers, they try to start teaching too much stuff that they don't know yet, and then the thing that happens is they get to messing everything up. And one thing that I did early on, and I know you did as well, is I just taught what I was certain of and what I knew I could help people fix. And if I didn't understand something, I went and found out. I'd ask my mentors or other teachers, or I would go find out what I didn't understand or what I didn't know, and then so I could add that to my repertoire, if you will, of things I could put out there. And so I think some of it is incumbent on the student to try to not go learn too much. You remember our little buddy Jay Wiz. One time I gave him a lesson, and this kid was a trip, funny kid, great kid. I gave him a lesson, and I was trying to get him to get his left wrist flat at the top and get the club face square, because he used to get it real cupped and open. And that night I got done after I gave him a lesson, and he called me up on the phone and he said, Mr. Wayne, do you think it would be, I'm watching the Golf Channel, and they said that Tiger Woods is an aggressive player. Do you think I should try to be an aggressive player? And I said, no, Jack. I think you should try to get your left wrist flat at the top, get your glove base square.
Yeah.
But so people are inquisitive and they want to know. But I think we have to, as teachers, we have to develop a plan for them and keep them on their plan long enough for them to really learn how to do something, and then start adding to it, making sure they understand why we're adding and what we're adding, and more importantly, what that's going to do to their golf swing on a positive note. So I think just training them, helping them learn how to learn is an important thing for us as well.
Last question I'll pose to each of you. I'll start off with mine. I get the same person asked the question, like, after we talk, when you go online, what do you look at to get information? Like, who do I pay attention to? And I said that I like watching videos of tour players explaining things they do, because I like that perspective. And I watch videos of people that I think are really good teachers with students that they teach. Like, I'll use, for example, Justin Parsons will put up a video of somebody he works with and explain what he's doing. And I try to, kind of see where he's coming from. Mm-hmm. But my caution is if they're breaking down a swing of somebody they've never watched in person and they've never taught, I think it's bullshit. And if they've never taught a player that ability, I'm not going to listen to them either. Right. And that's kind of how I know that's probably harsh to put it in those categories. And then exactly what you touched on with the book. Then Rick, I watched lots of videos of, ever since he retired, there's a gazillion Nick Saban videos out there and mm-hmm. have it being from Alabama and stuff. But I saw one of Rick Pitino the other night, right? Like, I like watching videos of great coaches and people that have been mm-hmm. successful, think how they think and do. But that's I like watching players explain what they do. Some of the stuff when you see them put out of Tiger talking about how he went through stuff, I learned a ton from Smiley and Lucas and all the great players I've been lucky to be around. And then I watch teachers with their students. I don't get in much to people analyzing a swing that they don't know anything about. What about you guys? Go ahead, Rick.
Well, I think that I thought as you were describing that, I think I know some listeners or viewers are not coaches, right? So how do we help players? Or, what's the word for them? I think that it's different. I think the three of us and other coaches can all process information. We might say, hey, I like that. I don't like that, whatever. But we all have more years of experience and probably more understanding than most of our students or the people online looking at stuff. So I like you. It's not all golf coaches and golf content. It's like, how does a human being learn something, mm-hmm. right? I wish I had gone through the journey of, learning how people learn before I even started teaching, right? So I spent too many years giving people information with no idea how they're going to actually learn something, mm-hmm. right? And then all this different stuff. How do they perform all of that? So I believe those are core things, right? So I think the listeners of this that are just players, recreational players that want to improve, they can benefit from aspects of athleticism and human performance outside of just golf, right? But your example of, taking every medicine in the drugstore, how do you stop them from quite frankly, how do we give them the filter, right? Yeah. Unless they're talking to us in person and they say, hey, here's the 12, people I'm following, which are good, which are bad. Well, it's like some of their content might be great and some of it garbage, right? So mm-hmm. even us would have a hard time filtering through it. Yeah. So somebody could say, hey, forget all of it. I'm just going to find somebody in my area or online and work directly with, so they actually get coached, right? So, I highly recommend that. Finding, it sounds very old school, but I think that relationship and somebody that gets to know your game well enough. I just don't know how well that's going to get delivered over time. Even, technologies are changing, and there's going to, they're going to be beam up Tony, and the avatar Tony just drops in next to them on the golf
We're
course
in trouble if that happens.
well, but I just think that there are some things that advancements aren't gonna address, because we are talking about human beings and that. So I would say less information, be specific. I've I don't know how well you guys know Adam Young, but I think Adam has done just a brilliant job of putting content out there that's super practical. Teaches the basics of like, well, what the heck is the golf club doing? What do we need it to do? So, early on, I said I'd post more, except it'd all be plagiarism, because I would probably communicate the same stuff Adam communicates, but he's far better than I'll ever be as far as a writer, his blogs and his videos and all that stuff. So, I'd say, hey, that would be a safe person for somebody to follow for information.
Yeah.
But we all have our own favorites.
That's a good point. That's very good.
And then it's like, well, what is, what isn't in his programs? You know what I mean? Like, he's developed programs that I think are, hey, there's nothing unique, or I would say nothing that's a fad, right? Because we have, Nelly Corda, I don't know, it doesn't look to me like she shallows the shaft a lot, and Tiger didn't. And yet everybody on the practice tee is dropping their arms behind them, and it's like, right? And so it's like,
God forbid you post a video with somebody that doesn't do it too. Everybody jumps in to tell you what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, right. But anyway, but all that to say, I would say that how would a consumer, a player, test and know that, to the question of that your friend asked you, how do you know which stuff's good? What should I pay attention to? And it's like, here I'm rambling and I'm not giving a clear answer, so I can't even. I just think, watch out, right? And I think there are other ways to learn to play well, other than, and granted, hey, I'm not inexpensive. If somebody wants to come spend time with me and get my expertise, it's going to cost some money, right? So I get it. There's there's economics to this, and yet there's this free stuff that somebody can sit with their bag of chips and their Diet Coke at 2 a.m. and try to learn golf, right? And so I've mentioned this to you before, Tony, but I've got a little sandwich board at the drive around on the practice tee that says, hey, has YouTube and Instagram got you screwed up? Let me help you sort it out. Like, I've chosen, because I know these people are confused.
Yeah.
And
you're right.
And not every video they've watched on YouTube or Instagram is bad, but they've just got so much going on. They won't stay with it, right? Because it must not have been the right information. So then they try something else. So I'd say staying committed to something. And you know what? I was my best when I had a little bit of wrist flexion. I didn't even know that term, wrist flexion, right? Okay. But so I had to organize everything else in my golf swing around that, right? And then I changed that, because when I struggled, a coach told me, you got to get that left wrist flat. And I never played good golf again. It's like we got to be super careful, right? So
right.
Coaches,
no, you're right.
I think all three of us take our profession very serious. Like, we're scared to death of screwing somebody up, right?
That's the thing you're most afraid of.
But Colonel Sanders could have coached Tiger to number one. It's like, so, it's like, just because a player has had success doesn't mean the coaching was great, right? We don't know that. We don't know that for sure, right? So the point is at the end of what Rick's saying, is like, hey, don't go look at YouTube's. No, there's good information, but if whether it be Parker McLaughlin or Joe Mayo, like, I think somebody could, if they needed short game help, if they stuck with either program, they're probably going to be pretty damn good. Right.
Well, absolutely. They got to commit to it, stick to it.
Right.
Learn, like Wayne was saying earlier. Learn.
Right. Right on. Yep.
Wayno, wrap this up. Just a couple minutes here. Where do you, when they ask you for advice in that, where do you send them?
Well, I've always been of the opinion that you learn to teach from being around great teachers. You learn to play from being around great players, and you learn to coach from being around great coaches. So those are different things. And as you know, I've always tried to hang around the best teachers I can get around. And, I remember the first time I met Rick. I mean, I couldn't wait to tell him that I used to watch him hit balls at the Masters back when I first got into teaching. And, we sat there over a couple beers, and I told him, I told him what I remembered about his golf swing and all that kind of stuff. And this was before I was even teaching, so I've always tried to be around great players, and I've always tried to listen to great players. I mean, I tell a story all the time about Sam Farlow, who, he was one of the best amateurs. He played professionally for a while, but one of the best amateurs out of Alabama, and he just passed away, a month or so ago. And I've gave him lessons over the years. And, one time I remember I was telling him what I wanted him to do, and he said, no, I'm not going to do that. And I said, well, why not? And he said, well, I don't like to think about my hands at all and what they're doing when they hit the ball. And I said, okay. So I said, well, Sam, what do you think about? And he said, well, I don't think about hitting the ball with my hands at all. He said, I try to find my finish and see if I can get my hands to do exactly what I want them to do at the finish. And he said, I figure if I can do that, I've probably done something right at the bottom. And, so I've always tried to pick the minds of great players, just like, you have with Lucas and Smiley and all the great guys that you've taught, and try to learn something from every really good player that you teach. And remember that. And, I think we've all talked about the great coaches. I remember when you and I were over at the top 100 thing at Duke, and we got to go watch Coach K that one afternoon. I mean, that was great. He said he didn't know anything about golf. He couldn't really help us with golf, but he talked a lot about coaching basketball and what he tried to get done, during his couple hour sessions when he was coaching the Duke men's basketball team. So I think you learn different things from different people, and then you have to put that together into a program that you're trying to put out as your own, and get it as organized and as simplified as you can, so that when people do come to you for golf instruction, they can be less intimidated by taking a lesson from a good teacher or whatever. And, because how many times have we had people, oh man, I'm so nervous, I don't know what to do. Well, just hit the ball. I mean, this is really no big deal. I'm going to film a couple golf swings. We're going to sit down and we're going to talk about it. This shouldn't be a high stress situation, but people get under stress, when they come to teachers because they're nervous or for whatever the case may be. And I think our job is to get them at ease so that we can identify their problems, again, prioritize their learning, what they need to do better, and get them to understand that, so that when they do go searching for information, they can kind of put it into the category, oh, this may help me, or, oh man, I don't think I'll listen to this. This doesn't sound like anything Wayne's talked to me about before. So maybe, and I tell my students all the time, hey, if something's interesting, write it down. Tell me where I can find it and call me. I'll look at it and I'll tell you what I think, whether I think it fits with your game and what we're trying to do or not. So, I try to help my people, enjoy the internet, enjoy the time, enjoy the ability to look it up and be entertained by it, and also help try to keep them on the right track so that they can get better. Because if they're coming to you, they want to get better, and if they don't get better, they're going to blame you for not getting better. I can tell you that. So, our job is really to try to keep them on task and make sure they get better.
Wayne, Rick, this was awesome. Thank you guys for taking the time. This was a good discussion. I think we helped some folks out there. Rick, appreciate you always taking the time to jump on, and hopefully we get together and we get to see you some more this year. Wayno, looking forward to seeing you this week.
Well, thanks to you.
Guys.
It was a lot of fun.
Guys.
Good being with
always
you.
Fun.
All right. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Okay. Thanks.